You look tired. He's been outside in the cold all morning. He's just relaxing in the voodoo garden because it's a tropical 80 degrees down here, and it's humid, it's kind of hot, it's actually kind of nice. He loves it down here. But anyway, thank you for joining me in the Voodoo Garden. Welcome, my name is Ray. I will be your host today, and it's not so much a voodoo garden this week, it's more like a voodoo intensive care ward. And that's really kind of scary. I've been having problems, and that's why the title of this video here is The Dangers of Organic Gardening, because I don't mean that as a joke. I don't mean that as a tag that'll just get you in here. I mean this as a genuine warning, because although the voodoo garden is my fun place and I like to joke around, there are some serious aspects of gardening, and I do like to address those as they come along. And this is something that is affecting me in a really weird, wide sweeping way. And I want to show you what's going on. Take a look. Let's take a tour, and I want to show you a few things that are going on in the voodoo garden. I'm not going to show you all the plants, but I will show you just some of them so that you can see what I'm talking about. Take a look at this. The damage I was experiencing, well, rather the damage my plants were experiencing, it all depended on the plant. Different types of leaves, different types of plants, all had different symptoms. For instance, look at this one. This is a pepper plant, and it was grown from a seed sent to me from across the country by David. And you can see on the outer leaves, it's kind of a little bit, I don't know, mottled? Yeah, a lighter green. I don't know what that is. In this tiny cup is my tobacco plant, my Shirazi tobacco. I've grown these many, many times, and I've never had this happen to them. Look at the leaf on the lower left here. It almost looks like leaf miner damage, which is an insect, and I don't have leaf miners here. But the very top leaf that's underneath there, that has some weird damage, almost looks like spider mite damage. Yeah, strange. And then the upper right-hand leaf, that looks like a fungus damage. It is just the most curious thing. My purple passion plant was doing just fine, and then all of a sudden, bang, it fell victim. And remember those two cuttings I put in there? They died. They rotted away so fast, I was surprised. I've never seen cuttings rot away in soil as fast as those did. And I thought, well, maybe it was the soil. I had no idea, but then I started noticing on the older leaves. Look at the older leaves here. It's some kind of a chlorosis, which is like a fading of the color, and I don't know what that is. It's not that the purple went away, it's just that the green is kind of a little bit strange looking. You see what I mean? This is my blood banana, also known as a Zabrina, I believe. It was the most beautiful specimen. I was so proud of this thing. This is the baby of the adult that I used to have. It had beautiful leaves, and the damage that I see here, generally I will see if it's over-fertilized or if it gets maybe a little bit of sun scald. This is massive leaf damage on a universal scale. When it comes to the leaves, there was no leaf left untouched. It was crazy. This is my pineapple plant. I've had this for so long. It's just a fixture in the voodoo garden, and it's always done well. It really takes no care whatsoever. But this solid structure of a plant was even affected. Take a look at the leaves really close, and you can see that they're actually all curved in, almost closed up. Look at this. This leaf is supposed to be opened, but these leaves are closing in. They're curling in and actually closing. That's not what a pineapple leaf is supposed to look like. This is not a healthy pineapple plant. The same is going on with my bird of paradise. This is a strange, strange situation indeed. Like I said, it's universal. It's going on everywhere, but it's taking on different symptoms everywhere. I have a night blooming jasmine. Its leaves aren't curling in, but ooh, it's waving all over the place. Hi! No, but its leaves are getting a little bit stunted and a little bit pinched. See what I mean by pinched? Yeah, they're kind of deformed. Really weird. They were coming out big and full and lush. It was amazing. And then all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, it just gradually went downhill. Ouch. Ouch. Yes, it is something that has been going on, and it's been gradually getting worse, and I'm trying to figure out what it is, because what I like to do when something is going wrong is I try to figure out what the reason is. I don't try to worry about what's going wrong. I try to figure out why it's going wrong. And if I can figure out the why, I can usually figure out the cure. And that's how I work things. So I tried to figure out why my plants are doing what they're doing. And okay, first thing I noticed is it's not just one plant. If it was one plant, I can understand it. If it was a plant that was closer to the light, farther from the light, by a draft at the door, was in a different type of soil that's normal, I tried to figure out what was the variable in all of this, the thing that was not the same. And it turns out it's everything. Whether they're close to the light, far from the light, in large pots, small pots, given a lot of water, a little water, it was all the same. And I thought, well, okay, well, they're all getting the same treatment, so what is it? And I went all out. I mean, I pulled every trick out of my bag and I tried to work it. My one idea might be, well, maybe it's a soil-borne fungus or something like that. Something's destroying the roots, because the temperature in here is fine. I have a fan up there and it keeps the air circulating. I don't have any kind of fungus going on the leaves. I recognize a fungus when I see one. So I thought, well, maybe it's in the soil. So I mixed up a little hydrogen peroxide with my water and I flushed out the soil. It didn't seem to help. So I went on to the next step. I saw the chlorosis, which is the fading of the colors on the leaves. I thought, well, maybe it's an iron deficiency. So I got myself some chelated iron. Chelated iron is a form of iron that the plants can readily take up into their leaves. And sometimes when you have like a faded out color, it can either be one or two things. If it's a uniform faded color, it's a nitrogen deficiency. I can fix that, no problem. But if it's a color that takes away from the leaves but it leaves the stems green, that's usually one or two things. It's either an iron deficiency or it's a magnesium deficiency. So I bought myself some chelated iron. This is nothing more than iron in a powdered form that you mix with water and you water your plants, and your plants can use it up very easily. That didn't work. I thought, crap. So I went on to my next bag of tricks, literally my bag of tricks. This is called Epsom salt. And Epsom salt is not a salt at all. It's nothing more than magnesium sulfate from an area in England called Epsom. Yeah, so they call it Epsom salt, but it's not a salt. So don't get this confused with salt. It's not a salt, even though they call it a salt. That kind of confuses people. It's nothing more than a mineral that is good for your plants. And I have these bagged up in baggies because Epsom salts are very susceptible to humidity in the grow room. If they're left out, they will, it's like salt when it gets in a humid area, it'll cluster up and be really hard. So I have to put these in Ziploc baggies. Yeah, and so it looks like I'm dealing in methamphetamine, but I'm not. This is Epsom salts, and what this does in a nutshell is you put about maybe a quarter cup in a 5-gallon bucket and you fill it up with water and you water your plants with it like you normally would. And this is not a fertilizer. This is nothing more than an actuator. And an actuator, for me, my definition is it's something that enables your plant to do what you want it to do. What Epsom salt does is basically it enables your plants to take advantage of the nutrients that are in the soil. So if your plant is fading out and it can't take in the nitrogen that's in your soil, use a little Epsom salts in your water and it enables your plant to take up the nitrogen and green up. So this literally helps your plants green up. That bag of tricks just went right down the tubes and I was like, what is going on? And I got these worm castings and I used worm castings. Worm castings are a wonderful thing. Worm castings is nothing but a fancy word for worm poop. Worms live in an environment, they will eat stuff and they will poop. And I got these from Growers Solution, a website online, and they sell really good quality worm castings. Now, worm castings are only as good as what you put into your worms. You can't get a miracle out of their butt if you don't put a miracle in their mouth. So you have to feed them good stuff. And I don't know what they feed their stuff at this place, but I do know that the worm castings they sell me are absolutely excellent. And they only cost like $3 something for a box this big, but the shipping is kind of high. But I needed it, so I ordered it from them. It came in, and I put a top dressing of worm castings on my soil, and I also used it to make a worm tea. You take a handful, throw it in water, add some water to it, and it makes this weird looking tea, and I water it with it. Worm castings are not a fertilizer because they're very weak. What they do is they have this bacteria that comes out of the worm's intestines, and the bacteria is fantastic for your soil. So I thought, well, maybe I can add some beneficial bacteria to my soil, and that'll help. Nope. this box of tricks bit the dust as well, and I was like, wow, I'm crashing and burning all over the place. So I went online and I bought myself a soil test kit. Yes, yeah. I love being a scientist. I always wanted one of these when I was a kid to do science, but my mom probably thought I was going to blow the place up, which I probably would have. But this is a soil test kit. This will test my soil for potassium, phosphorus, nitrogen, pH balance, all kinds of stuff, because another one of my thoughts was, well, maybe the pH in my soil is too high or too low. I tested the pH randomly all over the place. My pH on these plants is around between 6 and 6.5, which I find to be perfect for my plants. Some people don't like it. I do. This is not too high. It's not too low. It's perfect. So I thought, my pH in the soil is fine. So it's not a matter of the pH being wrong, because if your pH is too high or too low, it can cause your plants to do wacky things you've only seen in cartoons. So I thought, pH is fine. Phosphorus is fine. Calcium is in there. What is going wrong with my soil? I don't know. So I pulled out this old rusty canister that I've had packed away, and I've been carrying this around for years, and I don't use it anymore. And this is my emergency, and this is what I had to do. And the reason I wanted to bring this to your attention is because although I grow organically, sometimes there's an emergency situation where I have to save my plants, and this is where I go inorganic. Sniff? Ew, smells awful. This is Miracle-Gro. Yeah, this is Miracle-Gro. And it was a hard brick, and I had to beat it up and microwave it to soften it up, because I think it's like 10 years old or something like that. But the problem is, the problem, or nice thing, I guess it depends on how you look at it. With inorganic fertilizers, as far as I know, they never go bad. They last forever. Organic stuff, it's time sensitive because it's a living, breathing thing. Inorganic stuff lasts forever. And I had this packed away, and it was in a box, and now I'm storing it in this canister to try to keep the humidity away. I took some Miracle-Gro and I mixed, I think it was a couple tablespoons in with 5 gallons of water. And the reason I did this is for one reason only. My plants were dying. The voodoo garden was dying. Death had come knocking at the door, and it was taking everything. There was no prisoners. Everything was dying in my room, and I thought, wow, I got to save this room. So what I did was I thought, well, I've ruled out all the common things that could possibly be wrong. It must be either one, what I'm feeding them, or two, my water, because I have a well. And I have a neighbor, well, actually, I'm surrounded in Iowa by farmers. And this farmer that surrounds me, he uses genetically modified crops. And I know everybody's got their opinions on that. But the genetically modified crops alone I wouldn't believe, are getting into my groundwater, from the genetically modified crops. He grows genetically modified crops, but he also, I believe, sprays herbicides to kill the weeds, because I saw him spraying one time, and I noticed that everything except his crops died in his fields and right at the perimeter of my property. And if they're spraying a lot of herbicides, chances are it could, not that it will, but it could seep down into the groundwater. And herbicide in your groundwater, when you water your plants, you're watering them with an herbicide. An herbicide is designed to kill. And the herbicide that he uses is a broad spectrum, which is designed to kill everything but what he's growing. And this is everything. Sad. Okay, so he's using that. He's also using inorganic fertilizers on a massive scale, I'm sure, because he isn't growing organic. And I'm not going to bash how he decides to grow his crops, but this is what I noticed. This is a fact. Whether I like it or not, this is a fact of what's going on around me. So I thought, well, maybe something's getting into my water. And so I wanted to rule out one last thing. What am I feeding my plants? And so I changed the fertilizer. I thought, well, this is why I went to the inorganic Miracle-Gro, because Miracle-Gro inorganic fertilizer does not feed your soil. And I've mentioned this in a program before. All inorganic fertilizers do is they bypass the soil. Your soil isn't even needed. All right, your soil is nothing more than a substrate for your plants to grow in. When you're giving them inorganic fertilizers, you're going directly from the fertilizer into the plant. Your plant takes that fertilizer directly. It's like giving yourself an IV tube in the hospital and you're off foods and they feed you through an IV tube. That's exactly what you're doing to your plants if you're feeding a Miracle-Gro. You're not feeding the soil and the soil's not feeding your plants. That's generally how I work in here. That's why I use organic fertilizers. The fertilizers don't feed my plants. They feed the soil microbes will feed my plants, and that's how it works. But something was breaking my cycle here. So I decided to bypass the soil and I decided to feed them directly with Miracle-Gro. I thought, well, if this helps, then I know it has something to do with my fertilizer. And if it was something wrong with my water, this wouldn't matter. Whether I feed my plants directly or I feed my soil, which feeds my plants, if my water is poisoned, it won't matter. It'll still kill my plants. So this was my scientific solution, whether I liked it or not. I had to actually try inorganic fertilizers and take a look at what happened. All right, this is back to the first plant you saw. And I want you to take a look at the very center leaves coming out. The top one, let me hold the camera with one hand and point it with the other. Right up here, this little top leaf here and this one here. You can see, if you look really close, they are some healthy looking leaves and the color is looking pretty good. The same can be said for the tobacco. The Shirazi, look at this leaf right here. This is one of the newer leaves and this one right here. This leaf is perfect in color, texture, size, everything is looking good. The banana tree, the very central leaf shows absolutely no damage. The leaves were showing damage as they were coming out and unrolling. This newest leaf here has zero damage to it. And I'm crossing my fingers that it doesn't show any. And even the fig, it was looking really kind of sad, and I was cutting leaves off. It's got new leaves that are just coming out right and left. Really fast and furious. Boy, when these things decide to put out leaves, they don't waste any time. But in addition to putting out the leaves, it decided to fruit. Yep, it's putting out fruit at the end of the stem. See right up close by the main stem? It was the fertilizer. Yeah, and so I went about this in a scientific way. I didn't get on my soapbox and yell about organics. I didn't get on my soapbox and yell about inorganics. I actually did what I needed to do to find out what was going on with my plants, and I had to figure out what the problem was before I could actually solve it. So it's not a matter of yelling about organics are the way or inorganics are the way. It's a matter of finding out what the problem is and finding the solution. So my solution is not to feed my plants with Miracle-Gro. This was a test in order to find out if my organic fertilizer was bad and my organic fertilizer was bad. So I want to make this very clear. I am not bashing the makers of this fertilizer in no way, shape, or form. In fact, my fertilizer, I believe, was good, but what happened was it turned bad somehow, because with organics you're dealing with a living, breathing thing. My fertilizer is made from pulverized dead fish and seaweed and kelp and boogers and God only knows what else is in that jug, because that's what organics is. In nature, in soil, it is a really ugly, nasty process. You don't think of that. When people think of organics, they think, oh, it's just so beautiful and natural. Let me tell you something. In nature, this is nothing more than a cannibalistic digestive system that is eating everything that has ever grown in it. That's what soil does. I know it sounds disgusting, but that is exactly what soil does. Plants, animals, birds, insects, they live, they breathe, they die, and eventually they hit the ground, and the ground is nothing more. Oops, almost broke something here. The ground is nothing more than the Earth's stomach, and the stomach digests anything it touches. It will, and that's what soil does. And that's what the fertilizer is all about. It is nothing more than pulverized dead things that are all slurred around, and you pour this disgusting sludge that you wouldn't even want to touch with your hands. You pour it into your soil, and your plants thrive on this stuff, and they give you food. So, but something happened, and I don't know what happened because I don't know how to test this fertilizer, and I don't know what went wrong. My guess is I kept it in a closed container, and I had it for so long, it just went bad. And things do. They go bad. Things will eventually go bad, unless, of course, you're Miracle-Gro and you are eternal. And you never go bad. But I think my fertilizer just went bad. So I have my plants on life support. And while they're doing that, for the shortest time possible, I'm going to have to just accept the fact that I have to use inorganics while I go out and I shop for something that is organic, something that's going to work. And I did have a solution. Instead of using that fertilizer, and instead of relying on this Band-Aid. And by the way, even though this Miracle-Gro is doing good for my plants, it is a one-way street to a brick wall. And I've mentioned that before, because if you use inorganics in your potting soil, eventually you're going to have this hard, ugly, gross-looking soil. It may take years, but eventually your soil will be so dead that nothing will survive it, and that's what happens eventually. So this is not my solution. This is my Band-Aid until I can find a solution. And my solution was, what I did was, when I held the free seed giveaway, everybody sent me an envelope, to get their seeds. And I took their envelopes and their letters and I shredded them up. Yeah, and I put them in this bucket. And I also drink coffee. So I took my coffee filters and I'm dumping it in here. And also from the garden in here, I have the leaves. Remember I told you I take the leaves and I crumble them on top of the soil. Well, I'm going to stop doing that for now. And what I'm doing is I'm crushing these leaves into a bucket. And I'm going to add some moisture. And I'm going to make myself, I'm actually going to use some of the worm castings because they have good bacteria in it. And what I'm doing now is I have this 5-gallon bucket. I've done a program on this before on how to compost indoors, and it can be done. I'm going to compost indoors. I'm going to make enough compost to make myself some compost tea. I can't use compost that's outside because it may have insects in it and it may contaminate my soil. So my only solution is to, 1, buy organic fertilizer, which I may or may not do, or 2, make my own. Why not? I'm a composter, I'm a gardener. I can make my own fertilizer out of the damage that is being caused by these plants and little things that I have around the house. So I got some leaves, I got some shredded paper, I got worm castings, I have coffee grounds, I have everything I need to find my own solution to fix my own problem. So that's what I'm going to do, folks. I'm going to make my own compost and I'm going to do it right here. And there is so much that you can do indoors to help your plants, and I hope that something in here might have helped you, because maybe one of your plants look like this and maybe you're having this kind of a problem. Maybe it's your organic fertilizer that's your problem. This stuff, even though it did go bad in here, I can take it outside, dump it on my compost pile, and the microbes in the soil are going to correct that situation. So that's not going to waste. I'm going to take that stuff outside, I'm going to pour it on my frozen compost pile, and in the spring turn it and mix it up, and it's going to really enrich my soil. So that's not going to waste. But I have to do something else, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make my own compost here. And that's another thing. It brings me to my last thing on this program is I do have something that I want to give to you as a gift. And it's coming up in an episode very, very soon. I'm going to start filming it today, I think. And it's a gift. It's a gift from me to you so that you can do the things that I do. Even if you live in an apartment or a house or you're in a place where you can't compost, you're going to have to tune in to another Voodoo Garden episode coming up soon, and I'm going to show you what you can do, and I'm going to give you a product that can help you do that. So tune in for that. But until then, this is Ray in the Voodoo Lab, the Voodoo Lab, and I just wanted to bring this to your attention because it's something that was really serious and something that I didn't want to joke about, something that can go wrong, but also I think I might have found the solution. It took me a while. It took me a lot of testing and stuff, but I think I might have found the solution. And keep your fingers crossed, folks. I'm not going to let this Voodoo Garden go gently into that good night. I'm going to bring it back to life, and it's going to be just as good as it ever was. I think I'm pretty much done here. This is Rascal Ray in his laboratory saying thank you for joining us in the Voodoo Garden. We're out of here. Are we done? Wag. Of course we are.